To begin my story, I'm going to have to kind of shame a production company first, but they are redeemed at the end. So... Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am Onyie, and this is Onyie Sings. Welcome, everyone. If this is your first time visiting, thank you so much for coming by, and I hope you hang around for a while. Feel free to subscribe at the end of the video, or subscribe right now if you'd like. And if you are returning, as always, welcome back. Yay! And thank you so much for coming back. Thank you so much for viewing. Thank you so much for being. And if you have not subscribed yet, please feel free to subscribe right now if you'd like, or wait till the end of the video and smash my face. And at the very end of the video, if you smash my face, you can subscribe. So today's lesson is going to be half story time, half lesson. I am going to tell you all my backstory when it comes to my own personal vocal trauma and how I've overcome it and how you can as well. We'll begin with my story. To begin my story, I'm going to have to kind of shame a production company first, but they are redeemed at the end. So just so this video doesn't end up becoming an hour long, I am doing a bit of an abridged version of my actual situation. To put it shortly and sweetly, for about a year and some change, I was just making really bad decisions as a vocalist, and I was stretching myself far too thin and giving myself no rest between shows, between gigs, between anything. So for about a year, I basically did several shows back to back to back with not even a week between them to let my voice rest. I'm often hired and cast to sing very forcefully and belt and wail and all those things. If you are not doing that healthily, especially that kind of singing, that kind of aggressive, bombastic vocalizing, it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. And I did know that, but sometimes especially when you're young, you have this mentality that you are unstoppable. I prided myself on having an indestructible voice, and that was incorrect. As long as I am human, I have vocal cords like a human being, and they are fallible and they are fragile. And you have to be healthy and you have to take care of them. And I just wasn't. And it wasn't on purpose. It wasn't out of a lack of care or a lack of gratitude, because absolutely, I'm not grateful for what I'm able to do and what I truly do believe is a gift and something that I don't have to have and I don't have to keep, you know? But I did get to the point where I just wasn't thinking. I just wasn't thinking about it. I just kind of assumed my voice would always be there. I kind of assumed that I wouldn't make mistakes that could hurt me because I knew too much, and I did. And yet, at the time of my vocal trauma, I was actually working for productions, and I was in the production shows for one of the cruise ships, and I actually sang the role of F1, which is basically female one, or the Park and Barker of the show. So she's the gal that is hired to just be a vocalist. Hopefully you can move, but you are there to ballad your head off and scream to the rafters. I won't go into the specificity of what show I was doing or what ship I was on, but I was working with as one of their production singers. And I did bring up the fact that I was concerned about some stuff that I felt in my voice, that I could hear in my voice and I could feel even when I was speaking. That concern, I wouldn't say it fell on deaf ears, but it fell on unconcerned ears. After letting folks know about my vocal concerns, and nobody doing anything about it, and not even seeing an ENT or getting any kind of checkup, I went into rehearsing as usual. I continued to rehearse, I continued to belt, I continued to wail at AM. There was never a time that I couldn't do that. So I had no qualm with it. I was concerned to an extent, but I'd never had a serious vocal issue before that, so I didn't know how serious this could be. At the point that you can hear it and feel it, it's bad, and you should get scoped immediately by an ENT. I did not get scoped, and I was not sent to an ENT until I lost my voice in the middle of a performance. Yes. And it really could not have been a worse time for that to happen. We were actually doing our show for the production folks. So there is a big show that you do of your show before you get on the ship. And it's the way the production folks are able to see where you are with your show and whether it's ship ready or not, basically. They want to make sure that everybody's pulling their weight, that the production is the quality of production that prides itself on, and that all the cast members are up to the job. It's also the way that they kind of start to cast for their next ships and next shows. So if you're someone who wants to continue with the company, you definitely want that performance to go well so that you can be considered for future shows. And it was at that performance that my voice literally disappeared out of my mouth while I was singing. I was mid something and my mouth was open, I was on mic, and nothing came out. And that was one of the most terrifying moments of my life, I think. Even to this day. Yes, and that's happened twice in my life. So they sent me to an ENT, surprise, surprise. There was some hemorrhaging. There was bleeding on my vocal folds. To make a very long story short, basically the liaison that I was meant to work with didn't do what they were supposed to do. I ended up being sent back to the ship far too early. I was sent home to recover from the vocal trauma and as an opportunity to not have to go through the whole surgery route and things like that. So through rest and rehabilitation, I was supposed to then be sent back to the ship, ready to go. However, I was not rested, nor was I rehabilitated. And the folks that I saw to give me the fit for duty okay to go back to the ship were not trustworthy, as it turns out, and I was sent back to the ship far too early. I was not fit for duty, and I had another situation that happened during a performance. This I do remember. I was in the middle of singing Signed, Sealed, Delivered, which to this day still has I wish of all songs it wasn't that, because I love Signed, Sealed, Delivered so much, and I am better about it now. Like, I can sing it now, where for a long time I could not even sing the song. Not because I physically couldn't, but just because it overwhelmed me. So I was in the middle of singing Signed, Sealed, Delivered, and I went up for a note and nothing came out. So it was another circumstance where I opened my mouth to sing and nothing happened. People in the audience thought that my mic went out because it stopped so short. My voice stopped on a dime. And of course, after that, it was then taken far more seriously. I was scoped again, and we found out that the hemorrhage was still there, the bleeding was still there. It was decided that I needed to then go into surgery because by this point, I had been running on a broken ankle, basically, and unaware for some of it. And where the damage at one point was something that could have been fixed through rest and rehabilitation, unfortunately, because I was running on a broken ankle, I was making it worse. By this point, we couldn't find a way around surgery. If I wasn't a singer, there was an opportunity to not have to do surgery. If you are a singer and you are a professional singer who gigs and works regularly, like I was in that situation, the doctor realized, and I thankfully had a doctor who was used to working with performers and singers and all of us, and he was outright letting me know, sorry, if you want to continue to sing the way you sing, we're gonna have to do surgery. And that was a harrowing experience. The surgery went beautifully, thank you God. Also, the healing went well, because sometimes the healing can also be a problem. If you heal in such a way that it leaves a scar or anything like that, it will affect the sound of your voice, and that was a big concern of mine. But thankfully, like I said, the surgery went well, and the healing went well, and I was able to take therapy, because this is the redemption for... They took care of everything. They handled my hospital stay. They handled my staying in a hotel while I was going through the hospital situation. I unfortunately had to stay in Weston, Florida for, no offense to Weston, Florida, but I had to stay in Weston, Florida for several months. I can't remember how many months exactly, but for several months while I was going into surgery, going through surgery, and then healing after surgery, all of that, I was put in a hotel in Weston, Florida and taken care of fully by they took care of my medications, they took care of the therapy, they took care of everything. One of the best things I received from all of that was working with the therapist I worked with, working in vocal therapy, period. It completely changed my teaching. It completely changed the way I approached my own voice. And it was one of the best things to happen to me outside of everything that happened to get me there, unfortunately. I became a better teacher because of it. I am a better teacher because of it. So I don't know if that's necessarily worth it, but I feel like it is. The knowledge I have, I'm sure at some point or another I would have maybe gotten there, and while in therapy, that's where I learned so many exercises and so many ways of just taking care of the voice, but also ways of approaching damage and approaching trauma in a way that is realistic and does actually build your voice back up, does build strength, does fix things. Who knew? Also, therapy is where I understood how I needed to utilize the information I already had. You know the saying, do as I say, not as I do. And there's a reason that saying exists. And I was living that as a teacher. I knew what to say and I knew how to teach it. And I knew what I needed you all, my students, to do. But I wasn't taking my own advice. Vocal therapy actually reassured me both as a singer and as a voice teacher, because it solidified what I already knew and also really hammered home the fact that this was stuff that I could have prevented and stuff that I can prevent moving forward. And also, if you can believe it, it was after that, only a few months after that, that I auditioned for and booked the national tour of Rent as Joanne. Somehow, after all of that, I was able to do a year-long tour while never calling out because of my voice. And that was basically my goal. The whole tour was, even if I do have to call out, it cannot be because of my voice. I cannot let my voice become a hindrance, especially post-surgery, especially doing a show like Rent, which at that time was the biggest production contract I'd ever received, I'd ever earned. I did not want my first foray into the world of Broadway to be a hobble. I did not want to limp into that position. I wanted to make sure that I was strong and stayed strong. Only about 4 months after my surgery, 3 months after my therapy, I auditioned and booked Rent and then went out on tour a little while after that. So to have gone through all of that trauma and still be able to say that I was able to successfully do the tour of Rent and then move on to have a career in New York City as a performer, I just hope that that gives hope to other performers, other singers, other vocalists who also have dealt with or are dealing with trauma. Just to say that there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is another side to it. You can come back from that, and you can come back stronger than you were before. And that might sound almost like a superhero thing. But since all of that, which was back in 2007, I did the tour of Rent in 2007, 2008. And feel free to look that up. I was Joanne in the national tour of Rent from 2007 to 2008. It was on that tour that I met the woman who became my best friend and still is to this day, Christine Dwyer. She was my Maureen. And it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. So going from one of the most traumatic experiences in my life, losing my voice, to one of the most life-changing, positive things that ever happened to me. So now that story time is done, we're moving on to the tips for today. And I have this handwritten, even though I don't write anymore because technology. But my other phone is struggling with its sound issues, so I'm using an old phone, so hopefully it still looks okay. And I had to write down what was on my notes here. So my handwriting is atrocious. We'll see. Tips for how I overcame vocal trauma and stayed out of trouble. Practicing therapy exercises. Absolutely. I, to this day, practice some therapy exercises, and I teach therapy exercises in my teaching. The great thing about vocal therapy and why I bring it into the way I teach is that it gets into those nitty-gritty, anatomical, physiological things that you don't really usually get into with a normal voice teacher or vocal coaching. So I'm a stickler for that kind of stuff because I don't see how we can fix any of the issues that come out of the root problems without dealing with the root problem. And if you're someone who's taking vocal therapy, it is so important that you are able to take what you were learning in those therapy sessions and apply them outside. The practice of it, making it a new habit, making it a routine is what's going to save your voice and prevent future issues and future trauma. And next, follow your therapy directions. That is a big one too. Now you may say, how is that different than just do your therapy exercises? The follow the directions part is literally that. Follow the directions after the fact. After you've done your therapy, or even while you're in therapy, but when you leave the office, make sure that you are still doing what you're supposed to be doing. And that includes what you eat, what you drink, any medication you're taking, and rest. Absolutely, rest is a part of that. Those are the kinds of directions you are given by your therapist to take with you, go out into the world and make good decisions. And along those lines, I will go right into overall health and wellness is also a tip. Just be healthy and take care of yourself. The more you're able to do that for your whole body, the more your voice will be able to reward you for it. And the next tip, value your voice. Like I said earlier, valuing your voice isn't just saying I appreciate it, it's taking care of it. Give value to your voice and you will treat it as it is valuable. I really hope that I was able to help someone's out there who are also struggling with any vocal trauma, any vocal issues, any of that stuff that's really harrowing, really scary, and can kind of get in the way of you having a future with your voice. There is still an opportunity to heal. There's still an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to be even better than you were before. And naturally, you would be better because what you were doing before is what got you into this mess. So hopefully you're better now. And as I always say, please, please, please leave any comments down below if you have any more questions about any of these trauma issues, about my own trauma, about my own experience. If you really want me to get into a deep dive into it, feel free to let me know. And feel free to ask me any questions. I'm an open book when it comes to this stuff because I know it helps others and because it would have really helped me if I'd had anyone like that at that time in my own life. So I'm happy to be that to anyone else who's also struggling, also getting through something, because you can overcome it too. Yeah! Now, the homework for today. What is the homework for today? Well, I will tell you. The homework for today is in line with valuing your voice. So the homework is value your voice. Name one thing that you absolutely love about your voice. Just one thing. Write it down. Remind yourself of it. And remember to value that aspect of your voice as well as value your voice overall. As always, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for watching. There's now a playlist for these voice lesson videos, so feel free to binge watch all the videos, learn as much as you can. There are more coming and I'm very excited about it. If you had a good time, like, share, and say hello there, and smash my face to subscribe. Bye! There it is. And that's the homework. And that's the no. And that's the homework. Patrick. And that's the homework. Yeah. I don't know where I'm looking.